Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows.
Welcome to Ham-Vention CKV2TX for show specials and quality products.
Hi, everybody. We're on the road again, this time in Dayton, Ohio. For some 30 years, I've been in broadcasting, and a lot of friends of mine are and were ham radio operators. They always said, you've got to go to Dayton in the springtime. It is the biggest assemblage of ham radio operators anywhere. Well, this week on American Montage, we are in Dayton for the annual Ham-Vention. It's been going on since the 1950s, and this year, some 35,000 people are here. What you're hearing in the background is an innovative way to learn code. It's being played on a cassette machine from the back of a pickup truck. A vendor is here. There are thousands of people here selling everything from new computer equipment to old-fashioned tubes and things you haven't seen for a very long time. That is some of the fun of going to Ham-Vention, not only the new exhibits, but also seeing all the things for sale in the flea market.
For $25 and the 12-volt FM Ham-Vention.
The first person I ran into was Armand Noble. He is a publisher, and like many people at the Ham Fest, he was very quick to tell me not only his name, but his FCC call sign.
My call is N6WR, and people just call me Armand.
Armand, where are you headquartered?
Sacramento, California.
How many years have you been going to the Ham-Vention here?
We've been here about 10 consecutive years.
You know, I grew up in southern Indiana, not too far from here, and had wanted for decades to come here. I mean, this has been going on since, I think, the 50s.
Oh yes.
And I had to finally go out on assignment to do it. What does this mean to the ham radio operator? I want to get into what it means to the vendors, but to the people who are here, there seems to be a great sense of camaraderie.
That probably is one of the most interesting facets of amateur radio, is the way they all feel about each other. It's kind of like soldiers and policemen, a shared experience. They know they've all had to go and take the tests necessary to get a license, and so there is a great kinship amongst amateurs.
Can we define for those who have heard the phrase ham radio or amateur radio just what it is? The first thing I want to put in is that it's not like CB, where everybody and his brother can jump on with any kind of equipment and violate every rule in the book. It takes some degree of knowledge and discipline.
Absolutely, and amateurs kind of take great umbrage if someone sees an antenna on their car and says, what channel are you on? Yes, the various tests are somewhat difficult, but not impossible. There are some 700,000 active or amateurs in the United States today that have managed to pass these tests. Approximately half of the amateurs are employed in some technical employment, but the other half are as big a cross-section of occupation and education and income as you could imagine.
Well, here I am a couple of decades, hopefully, away from retiring. Been in broadcasting for 30 years, and I'm beginning to think, because I'm one of those people who's married to my job with no real hobby, that this would be the sensible thing for me to get into as I head toward retirement.
Well, that's true. Particularly while there are, many young amateurs, a thing of it is, for the older, let's say in another 50 years, when you can't play tennis or golf or anything like that, you can sit home, and here is an entire window on the world in the international way, and in the local with the various repeaters on. You're in constant contact, not only for the fun, but the emergency nature of it also.
Something I've noticed, too, that surprised me, but it really shouldn't, is that this group meeting here, the number of handicapped people, several blind people I've talked to, very, very senior citizens. You talk about a cross-section, but as far as affording a lot of people who are homebound a link with the outside world, this is absolutely perfect.
In fact, there is a organization called Handy Hams, and made up of the handicapped, bedridden, wheelchair-driven, housebound, who the able-bodied support this organization. And as you could well imagine, someone that could not even leave their home, what this offers. Now they can partake of other, of activities.
Since the 1950s, ham radio operators have been getting together every spring in Dayton, Ohio. It started out with just a few hundred enthusiasts and a half dozen or so vendors. This year, thousands of people selling new equipment and hundreds of flea market stands and a lot of people, 35,000 amateur radio enthusiasts, learning more about the wonderful world of ham radio and more than that, engaging in some wonderful camaraderie. A publisher who is nationally known for his good work in amateur radio is Armin Noble. We've been talking to him about the wonderful world of radio, and I asked him how things have changed in the decades or so since he got his first license.
I was first licensed in 1958, and I was interested in it far earlier than that. I think the biggest change, like you say, besides the equipment, getting much smaller and much lighter, consuming less power and costing much less, is that many years ago, amateur radio was made up of highly technical people, and that was the sum and total of it. Today, much more the emphasis is on emergency communications, a public service, furnishing the communications for the various walks or runs for charities, and that entire facet is taking the place of the intense technical orientation. In California, where I'm from, the Rose Bowl parade is monitored by the amateur television group.
Now tell us about World Radio, the company you're with. You're where in California?
We're in Sacramento, and World Radio is a monthly magazine about amateur radio, and we've been publishing monthly for 25 years.
Well, Armin, thanks for taking the time to talk. It took me decades to finally get here. Wish it were a little cooler today, but it's a heck of a convention.
It is a bit warm. Well, this is like the elephant cage. You get 30,000 people going. And any of your listeners that would like a totally free copy of World Radio, and we're very non-technical, very little jargon.
Good place to start, then.
And it would help them understand all the facets. If you just call area code 916-457-3655, one is yours totally free.
Armin, thank you.
My pleasure.
There are acres and acres of people who are selling everything from manuals for 1922 radios to used computer equipment, people just selling wire and connector and antennas and hard-to-find items, and inside the Hera Arena, hundreds of companies specializing in brand new equipment. Dick Miller is the number 2 man in running the massive convention this year.
I have to tell you a quick story. I was in my ham shack one day, and she came in and said, "What am I going to do with all this stuff if you die?" I said, "You have 2 choices. You can either sell it all as junk or you can join us." She said, "I think I'll join you." So she's a ham now. Both of our daughters are hams, both son-in-laws and 1 granddaughter.
Well, Dick Miller, you do great work. I'm glad I finally got to Dayton. It is one heck of a show, and I think I'm going to hit the flea market before everything's sold out.
Well, if everything's sold out, it would be a unique situation. But yes, Dayton is almost like Mecca for amateur radio operators. They come here and they love it. They come back year after year after year.
Dick, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
My special thanks to Jeff Dittmeyer at the Dayton Convention and Visitors Bureau and to everyone at the Ham-Vention and the Hampton Inn. And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. And check YouTube for more American Montage programs.